The crystalline chamber floated in the darkness of space, surrounded by the glow of 1,000 distant stars. Inside, 12 species sat in a perfect circle, each representing civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and their word was law across hundreds of systems. Ji-Wan stood in the center of the chamber, her dark suit a sharp contrast against the flowing robes of the alien counselors around her. She was the human ambassador, and today she had been summoned to hear their final decision. The air felt heavy, and she could sense the tension radiating from every corner of the room. Counselor Dex rose from his seat, his feathered body casting long shadows across the polished floor. His species had ruled the council for 800 years, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Ambassador Ji-Wan, humanity has been granted a great honor by joining this council 50 years ago. We welcome you with open arms, despite your youth as a species. Ji-Wan remained silent, her hands clasped behind her back. She had learned long ago that the council's words of welcome were nothing but pretty lies. Every decision they made was designed to control, to limit, to keep younger species in their place. However, Dex continued, his black eyes fixed on her, your species has proven difficult. You expand too quickly. You innovate too rapidly. You question our decisions at every turn. This cannot continue. A holographic document materialized in the air before Ji-Wan. She recognized it immediately. The Treaty of Eternal Harmony. She had received an advance copy 3 days ago, and what she read had made her blood run cold. Sign this treaty, Dex demanded, and humanity will finally find its proper place in our galactic family. Refuse, and you will face expulsion from the Council, economic sanctions, and isolation from all civilized space. Ji-Wan took the document and began reading aloud, her voice steady and clear. Article 7. Humanity must dismantle 90% of its military fleet within 6 months. Article 12. All frontier colonies beyond the designated human zone must be abandoned. Article 19. The Council will have full oversight of all human technological development. She looked up at Dex. This isn't a peace treaty. This is surrender. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had expected humanity to protest, perhaps to negotiate, but Ji-Wan's tone carried something they hadn't anticipated. Defiance dawned at that moment. A small device in Ji-Wan's pocket vibrated. It was a message from Captain Minho, transmitted through channels the Council didn't know existed. She glanced at it quickly. The message was brief, but devastating. Council fleets moving toward human borders. This is not about peace. They plan to invade regardless of your answer. Ji-Wan's jaw tightened. Everything became clear. The treaty was never meant to be accepted. It was designed to be so humiliating that humanity would reject it, giving the Council the excuse they needed to justify military action. And if humanity did sign it, they would become vassals, barely more than slaves. She looked at Hyunwoo, her young aide sitting in the human delegation area. He gave her a slight nod. Over the past month, he had been working in secret, digging through Council databases, finding hidden files that no one was supposed to see. What he discovered was a pattern stretching back centuries. Every time a young species showed too much promise, the Council crushed them. Some were conquered. Others simply disappeared from history. Ji-Wan made her decision. She held the holographic treaty in her hands and looked directly at Counselor Dex. You want our answer? Here it is. In one swift motion, she tore the document in half. The hologram flickered and died, its fragments dissolving into nothing. The chamber erupted into chaos. Counselors leaped from their seats, shouting in a dozen different languages. Security drones hummed to life around the perimeter. Humanity rejects your peace, Ji-Wan declared, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. We reject your control. We reject your authority. We choose freedom. Dex's feathers bristled with rage. You have made a grave mistake, Ambassador. The Council has existed for 3,000 years. We have brought order to the galaxy. You are nothing but children throwing a tantrum. Ji-Wan smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Then perhaps it's time for children to teach the elders a lesson about respect. She turned to her delegation. We're leaving. The 12 human representatives stood as one and walked toward the exit. Security drones moved to block their path, but Hyunwoo had already triggered the contingency protocols. Every human embassy across Council space was simultaneously evacuating. Every human trade ship was jumping to hyperspace. Every human outpost was sealing its borders. As Ji-Wan reached the chamber doors, she stopped and looked back at the Council one final time. You had 3,000 years to learn that peace cannot be forced. We tried to work with you. We tried to find common ground. But you only understand dominance and submission. So let me be clear. Humanity will never submit. Not to you. Not to anyone. The doors sealed behind the human delegation with a resonant boom that echoed through the chamber. For a long moment, the councilors stood in stunned silence. Then the shouting began again, louder than before. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for economic warfare. A few, very few, suggested that perhaps they had pushed too hard. Councilor Dex silenced them all with a raised wing. It does not matter. They are isolated. They are outnumbered. Within a week, they will come crawling back, begging for mercy. But in the back of the chamber, one counselor from a small species called the Pelians watched the scene with troubled eyes. Lorvin had served on the council for 40 years, and he had seen this pattern before. The council always underestimated those who refused to bow. And they always paid the price. Aboard the human transport ship racing away from the council station, Ji-Wan sat in her private quarters and opened a secure channel. Captain Minho's face appeared on the screen. Did they take the bait? He asked. Perfectly, Ji-Wan replied. They think we're weak. They think we're unprepared. They have no idea what's coming. Minho grinned. Admiral Doyen sends his regards. The Shadow Fleet is ready. Dr. Sora says the new weapons are operational, and every colony has confirmed they're with us. Ji-Wan nodded slowly. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. While the Council watched their official military forces, humans had been building in secret, researching in hidden labs, planning for the day when patience would no longer be enough. Send the signal, she said. It's time the galaxy learned what humanity really is. Across human space, in hidden asteroid bases and camouflage shipyards, thousands of vessels began to wake from their long sleep. The Shadow Fleet was going to war, and the Galactic Council had no idea what was about to hit them. 3 days after humanity's rejection of the treaty, the Galactic Council convened another emergency session. Councilor Dex stood before a massive holographic display showing human territory. Red warning indicators blinked across multiple systems. This makes no sense, one of the councilors hissed through translator devices. All human trade has stopped. Their diplomatic channels are silent. They've sealed their borders completely. Dex's feathers smoothed with confidence. They are panicking. They realize the magnitude of their mistake. By week's end, they will surrender. But the week ended with no word from humanity. Instead, something far more disturbing happened. Council intelligence networks went dark across 12 sectors. Communication relays simply stopped responding. Trade routes reported strange sensor ghosts. Ships that appeared and vanished before identification could be confirmed. Admiral Dayan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, deep within the Kuiper Belt beyond Neptune. Around him, hundreds of warships hung in the darkness like sleeping giants. These vessels had been constructed over 20 years in facilities the Council never knew existed. Humanity had learned an important lesson from history. Never reveal all your strength until the moment you need it. "Status report," Doyen commanded, his weathered face illuminated by tactical displays. "All fleet elements in position." "Admiral," his operations officer replied. 347 capital ships, 800 frigates, over 2,000 support vessels. The Shadow Fleet is fully operational. Dion allowed himself a slight smile. The Council believed humanity possessed perhaps 200 military vessels. They were about to discover they had underestimated by a factor of 10. Meanwhile, on Europa Station, Dr. Sora worked in her laboratory surrounded by equations that would have seemed like magic to most species in the galaxy. Her team had made breakthroughs the Council had declared impossible. The quantum fold drive would allow human ships to travel twice as fast as Council vessels. The adaptive shielding would make traditional weapons almost useless. "Dr. Sora," her assistant called out. "The Council has announced a blockade. They're sending the combined fleet." Sora didn't look up from her calculations. How many ships? Intelligence estimates over 10,000 vessels from multiple Council species. "Good," Sora said calmly. "More targets for the field test." Her assistant stared at her in disbelief. "Doctor, they outnumber our known forces 50-1. Sora finally looked up, her eyes gleaming with an almost frightening intensity. "That's why this is going to be so satisfying." The Council's blockade began with great fanfare. Their fleet assembled at the edge of human space, a massive wall of ships that stretched across multiple star systems. Council of X broadcast a message to every human world. "This is your final warning. Submit to Council authority or face the consequences. You have 48 hours. The response came not from the government, but from the colonies themselves. Governor Yuna, who oversaw the outer settlements, transmitted a reply that was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. The Council demands we choose between freedom and survival. They believe we cannot have both. They are wrong. The Free Terran Union declares its independence. We will live free or die fighting. There is no third option." One by one, every human colony echoed her declaration. Miners on distant asteroids, farmers on terraformed worlds, scientists in research stations. All of them chose freedom. The Council was stunned. They had expected fear. They had expected desperate negotiations. Instead, they faced absolute unity. Commander Taijin and his Special Operations team moved through the shadows of the Council's central communication hub, a massive station orbiting a neutron star. They had infiltrated the station using stealth technology that bent light around their ships, making them invisible to sensors. "Charge is set," Taijin whispered into his comm. 30 seconds to detonation. His team moved swiftly through the station's maintenance corridors, avoiding security patrols with practiced ease. They had trained for this mission for 3 years, studying every detail of Council security protocols. The explosion, when it came, was surgical and devastating. The communication hub didn't shatter. It simply stopped working. Every relay, every transmitter, every data node went dark simultaneously. Across the galaxy, Council coordination networks crashed. Ships lost contact with their command centers. Governors couldn't reach the capital. The mighty Galactic Council was suddenly deaf and blind. In the chaos that followed, Councilor X attempted to restore order by broadcasting from a backup system. He appeared on screens across Council space, his feathers disheveled, his voice strained. "People of the galaxy, do not be alarmed. This is merely a technical difficulty caused by human sabotage. We remain in complete control. Humanity is a rogue element that must be eliminated for the safety of all civilized species." The broadcast cut off mid-sentence. In its place appeared Ambassador Jiwan, sitting calmly in a simple room. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady and clear. "The Council tells you that humanity is dangerous. They are correct, but not in the way they claim. We are dangerous to tyrants. We are dangerous to those who would enslave others. For centuries, the Council has suppressed young species to maintain their power." Behind her, holographic documents began to display. Financial records showing Council embezzlement. Military orders authorizing the destruction of promising civilizations. Records of species that have been wiped from history when they refused to submit. "These are official Council files," Jiwan continued. "We did not fabricate them. We merely found what they tried to hide. The Council claims they bring peace. What they actually bring is stagnation and control. They fear change because change threatens their authority." Across the galaxy, billions watched in shock as decades of corruption was laid bare before them. The Council had always presented itself as benevolent guardians. Now the mask was slipping. "Humanity does not seek to replace the Council," G1 said. "We seek to free all species from their control. We offer an alternative, voluntary cooperation instead of forced submission. The choice is yours." The broadcast ended, but its impact rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. On Council worlds, citizens began to question. On subjugated worlds, rebellion sparked. The perfect order that had lasted 3,000 years was beginning to crack. Counselor Dex stood alone in his private chambers, watching the chaos unfold through what few communication channels remained operational. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear that perhaps, just perhaps, the Council had finally encountered a species they could not control. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council entered the Sigma Draconis system with overwhelming confidence. Fleet Commander Vex Rawl, a veteran of 40 campaigns, surveyed his forces with satisfaction. 10,000 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, representing the military might of 8 different species. Sensors detect minimal human presence, his tactical officer reported. 300 vessels at most, concentrated around the inner planets. Vex Raw's mandibles clicked in amusement. They guard their colonies with less than a patrol force. Either they are fools or they have already given up. He activated the fleet-wide communication. "All ships, prepare for assault. We will crush this resistance in a single engagement and teach humanity the price of defiance." The Council fleet advanced, their ships moving with the precision of long practice. They had fought together for centuries, perfecting tactics that had conquered countless worlds. What they didn't know was that every move they made was being watched. Admiral Dayun observed the enemy fleet from his command center on the Indomitable, hidden deep within an asteroid field. His tactical display showed the Council ships advancing exactly as predicted. Dr. Sora's team had spent months studying Council tactics, finding patterns in their strategies. "They fight like it's still the old days," Dayun muttered. "Massive formations, overwhelming firepower, direct assault. They haven't adapted in 1,000 years. Haas, they haven't 1,000 years. "Admiral, they're entering the trap zone," his operations officer announced. Dayun nodded. "All ships, maintain stealth protocols. Wait for my signal." Captain Minho commanded a strike group of 50 fast attack ships positioned behind the enemy fleet. His vessels were equipped with the new quantum fold drives, making them twice as fast as anything the Council possessed. He watched the enemy formation pass by, completely unaware of his presence. "Like shooting fish in a barrel," his co-pilot whispered. "Stay focused," Minho replied. "We get one chance at this." The Council fleet opened fire on the human defensive positions around. Sigma Draconis 4. Missiles and energy beams lit up the darkness of space. The human ships took defensive positions behind the planet, using its gravity well for cover. It appeared to be a textbook defensive maneuver, exactly what the Council expected. Vexral watched his weapons pound the human positions. Pathetic. They hide behind a planet like frightened children. All ships, concentrate fire. We will crack that world open if we must. That's when the trap sprung. From the asteroid field, Admiral Doyen's shadow fleet suddenly appeared, their stealth systems deactivating in perfect synchronization. 300 capital ships materialized as if from nowhere, surrounding the Council fleet's flanks. At the same moment, Dr. Sora's quantum mines phased into existence throughout the enemy formation. These weapons had been placed days earlier, invisible and undetectable until activated. The mines detonated in a cascade of chain reactions. Ships that had been flying in tight formation suddenly found themselves torn apart by explosions from within their own ranks. Shields that had been designed to stop external attacks were useless against weapons that materialized inside their defensive perimeters. What is happening? Vexral screamed as his tactical display dissolved into chaos. Where did those ships come from? Before anyone could answer, Captain Minha's strike force hit the Council fleet from behind. His ships moved at speeds that seemed impossible, dancing between enemy vessels and striking at their engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Council ships were too large and slow to respond effectively, but the real surprise came from the defensive positions around the planet. What Vexral had dismissed as a weak patrol force suddenly revealed its true nature. Engineer Bora had spent months transforming those ships into mobile weapons platforms equipped with adaptive defense systems. These platforms learned from every attack, adjusting their shields and countermeasures in real dash-time. Council weapons that should have destroyed human ships simply bounced off shields that adapted faster than targeting computers could compensate. Energy beams were reflected. Missiles were intercepted or jammed. The more the Council attacked, the less effective their weapons became. Impossible, Vexral breathed, watching his fleet's combat efficiency drop with each passing minute. This technology shouldn't exist. Admiral Doyen's voice cut through the chaos on an open channel. Fleet Commander Vexral, this is Admiral Doyen of the Earth Defense Force. You came here expecting an easy victory. You thought we were primitives playing with weapons we didn't understand. You were wrong. How? Vexral demanded. Our intelligence said you had only 200 ships. You were supposed to be weak. You saw what we wanted you to see, Doyen replied. While you sat in your comfortable council chambers making speeches about order and civilization, we were building. While you debated how to control us, we were innovating. You forgot the most important rule of warfare. Never underestimate an enemy fighting for their freedom. The battle raged for 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Council fleet, despite its numerical superiority, was outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outthought at every turn. Human ships used the asteroid field like cover, appearing and disappearing with frustrating efficiency. Minho's strike force crippled the enemy's capital ships one by one, and the quantum mines continued to detonate. Each explosion carefully calculated to maximize chaos. Governor Yuna watched the battle from the colony on Sigma, Draconis 4, while the fighting raged above. She coordinated the evacuation of non-essential personnel and prepared defensive positions in case any enemy forces made it to the surface. But she also had another task. Engineer Bora had given her control of the automated defense platforms. Governor, we're detecting a group of Council bombers trying to break through to the planet. A technician reported. Yuna's fingers flew across her control panel, activating defense grid. Let's show them what civilian engineers can do. The automated platforms around the planet opened fire with devastating accuracy. The Council bombers never stood a chance. What the Council didn't realize was that many of humanity's greatest military innovations came not from soldiers, but from ordinary people who refused to be victims. The turning point came when Minho's strike force penetrated the Council fleet's center and engaged Vexral's flagship directly. The massive warship had shields that could withstand tremendous punishment, but Minho didn't attack the shields. Instead, his ships targeted the shield generators themselves, using precision weapons that slipped through microscopic gaps in the defensive coverage. One by one, the generators failed. The flagship's shields collapsed. And in that moment of vulnerability, Admiral Doyon fired, the Indomitable's main cannon, powered by technology adapted from human fusion research, struck the flagship's command center with the force of a small star. The ship didn't explode. It simply stopped functioning, its systems overloaded beyond any possibility of repair. All Council ships, this is Admiral Doyon. Your commander is neutralized. Your fleet is broken. You have 1 minute to begin retreating, or we will continue the engagement until none of you remain. There was a long pause. Then, one by one, the Council ships began to withdraw. They left behind the wreckage of over 3,000 vessels. Human casualties numbered less than 200 ships on Earth. President Yemen stood before billions of humans watching the battle's aftermath. His face was grave but determined. Today, the Galactic Council learned a lesson they should have learned long ago. Peace cannot be imposed through force. They wanted peace through our submission. Instead, we gave them peace through our strength. Let this be a message to all who would threaten humanity. We will never bow. We will never surrender. We will fight for our freedom until the stars themselves grow cold. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The invincible Galactic Council had been defeated. The mighty combined fleet had retreated in disarray. And humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as young and naive, had proven they were a force to be reckoned with in the Council chambers. Councilor Vex watched the reports with growing horror. His perfect plan had crumbled. His invincible fleet had been humiliated. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was questioning the Council's authority. The war had just begun, and already the Council was losing. The months following the Battle of Sigma Draconis brought unexpected changes across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had expected a quick war followed by human surrender. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a stalemate that drained their resources and exposed their weaknesses in the Grand Council chambers. Tensions ran high. 12 species that had cooperated for millennia now argued openly, their unity cracking under the strain of an unwinnable conflict. We have lost 9,000 ships in 3 months, a Venic councilor declared, his crystalline body reflecting the harsh lights. My people are questioning why we fight this war. What threat does humanity actually pose to us? Councilor Vex's feathers ruffled in agitation. They defy council authority. They spread dangerous ideas about independence and freedom. If we allow them to succeed, the entire galactic order will collapse. Perhaps, a Pilian counselor named Lorvan said quietly, the order deserves to collapse. The chamber fell silent. For any counselor to question the fundamental purpose of the council was unprecedented. Lorvan continued before anyone could interrupt him. I have served on this council for 40 years. In that time, I have watched us crush 17 species who showed too much independence. We call it maintaining order. But what we actually maintain is our own power. This is treason, Vex hissed. No, Lorvan replied. This is honesty. Something we have avoided for far too long. While the council argued, Ambassador Nari worked in secret. She had returned to council space not as an official diplomat but as an underground agent, making contact with species who had grown tired of council control. Her mission was dangerous. If caught, she would be executed as a spy. But the risk was necessary. She met with Lorvan in a hidden location, a small station in neutral territory where council surveillance was minimal. The Belian counselor arrived alone, a sign of trust that Nari appreciated. "You're taking a great risk," Nari said. "Speaking against Thex like that could cost you everything." Lorvan's 3 eyes blinked slowly. "I have spent my entire life believing the council served a noble purpose, but I cannot ignore what I have seen. The files you transmitted, the evidence of what we did to developing species. I can no longer pretend we are the heroes of this story." He produced a data device and handed it to Nari. "This contains financial records spanning 2 centuries. The council leadership has been embezzling resources from member species, using those funds to maintain their military power and political control. If this information becomes public, the council will lose what little support it still has." Nari took the device carefully. "Why are you doing this?" "You could lose everything." "Because," Lorvan said sadly, "I would rather lose everything as an honest being than keep everything as a liar." Far from council space, Captain Sung Jin piloted his reconnaissance ship through a remote star system that official charts listed as empty. But his sensors told a different story. There were structures here, hidden facilities that someone had tried very hard to keep secret. "Captain, I'm picking up artificial structures on the 3rd moon," his sensor officer reported. "And life signs. Lots of them." Sung Jin brought his ship closer, using stealth systems to avoid detection. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive complex spread across the moon's surface, surrounded by automated defenses. And inside, thousands of beings from dozens of different species were imprisoned in terrible conditions. "This is a concentration camp," Sung Jin whispered. "The council has been operating prison camps." His crew worked quickly, recording everything. The evidence was damning. These weren't prisons for criminals. They were re-education facilities where entire populations had been sent when their species proved too difficult to control. Some of the prisoners had been here for generations. Their descendants didn't even remember their homeworlds. "Captain, we need to report this," his communications officer said. "Not yet," Sung Jin replied. "First, we're going to free these people." It took 3 days to quietly evacuate the camp. Sung Jin's ship couldn't hold everyone, so he called in support from nearby human vessels. They moved carefully, avoiding council patrols. By the time the camp guards realized what was happening, it was too late. Thousands of prisoners were already free, and Sung Jin had all the evidence he needed. Back on Earth, Dr. Sora worked on a different kind of weapon. Not bombs or guns, but information. She had developed a broadcast system that could bypass council censorship, transmitting directly to civilian populations across the galaxy. The technology was elegant and simple, using quantum entanglement to create communication channels that couldn't be blocked or traced. "We're ready," Sora told President Yemen. "One signal, and every being in council space will see the truth." "Do it," Yemen ordered. The broadcast went out simultaneously to billions of devices across hundreds of worlds. It showed the financial records Lorvan had provided. It showed the prison camps Sung Jin had discovered. It showed council meeting recordings where leaders openly discussed crushing young species to maintain control. And it showed Ambassador Jiwan speaking directly to the people. "Citizens of the galaxy," Jiwan said, her image appearing on screens everywhere. "You have been told that the council protects you. You have been told that without their guidance, the galaxy would fall into chaos. These are lies. The council doesn't protect you. It controls you. It takes your resources, suppresses your development, and erases your history when you become inconvenient." The evidence played out for all to see. Financial theft on a massive scale. Hidden prisons. Destroyed civilizations. Centuries of corruption laid bare. "Humanity doesn't ask you to fight," Jiwan continued. "We don't ask you to join our cause. We simply ask you to question. Ask your leaders why they need such control. Ask where your resources go. Ask about the species that vanished from history. Ask and demand answers. The impact was immediate and devastating. Riots broke out on 12 council worlds within hours. Governors found themselves facing angry populations demanding accountability. 3 species announced they were withdrawing from the council entirely. The Orthuri, Venic, and Pelians declared they would no longer support the war against humanity. Councillor Vex, desperate to regain control, made a fatal decision. He authorized the use of orbital bombardment cannons, weapons that had been banned for centuries due to their planet-killing power. His target was the human colony of New Jeju, a thriving settlement of 2 million people. If we cannot defeat them in battle, Vex declared to his inner circle, we will make them fear the cost of defiance. But the council had underestimated human intelligence networks. Captain Minho's operatives had infiltrated council communications months earlier. They knew about the bombardment order 6 hours before it was executed. Governor Yuna received the warning while reviewing colony expansion plans. She had 6 hours to evacuate 2 million people. Most commanders would have panicked. Yuna got to work. All citizens, this is Governor Yuna. We have credible intelligence that the council plans to destroy this colony. Evacuation protocols are now in effect. This is not a drill. You have 5 hours to board transport ships. The colony moved with practiced efficiency. Humanity had planned for this scenario, preparing evacuation routes and transport capacity for exactly this situation. Citizens grabbed essential belongings and moved to designated pickup points. Ships arrived in waves, loading people as quickly as safety allowed. 5.5 hours later, the last transport left New Jeju's surface. 30 minutes after that, council bombardment cannons opened fire. The colony was obliterated in seconds, turned into molten slag by weapons that cracked the planet's crust. But the bombardment was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every civilian population watched in horror as the council demonstrated what happened to those who defied them. The council intended it as a show of strength. Instead, it became their greatest mistake. Public opinion turned decisively against the council. Species that had remained neutral now openly condemned the attack. Former allies questioned their allegiance. And humanity's response was not revenge, but a simple message that Ambassador Jiwan broadcast from a refugee ship. The council just showed you what they truly are, she said quietly. They claim to bring civilization, but they bring only destruction. They claim to protect life, but they murder innocents to maintain power. Humanity seeks no empire. We want no subjects. We simply want to live free, and we want that freedom for everyone. The choice, as always, is yours. Councillor Lorvan watched the aftermath of the bombardment from his chambers and made his final decision. He could no longer serve a council that would commit such atrocities. He sent an encrypted message to Ambassador Nari. I'm ready. Tell me how I can help bring this corrupt system down. The galaxy was changing. The old order was crumbling. And the Galactic Council, for the first time in 3,000 years, was losing control. The final confrontation came not with a declaration of war, but with silence. The Galactic Council fractured completely as 6 species formally withdrew their support, and 3 openly joined humanity's cause. Councillor Vex found himself leading a coalition that grew smaller each day, held together only by fear and the fading illusion of invincibility dot in the council chambers. Vex stood before half-empty seats. Once, this room had represented the unified might of the galaxy. Now it echoed with absence and doubt. We must strike at Earth itself, Vex declared to the remaining loyalists. Cut off the head, and the body will die. Humanity's homeworld must fall. The Orthuri counselor, who had not yet officially left the chamber, spoke up. You propose attacking Earth. A planet of 8 billion civilians? Have we not committed enough atrocities? It is the only way, Dex insisted. We gather every remaining loyal ship. We hit Earth with overwhelming force before humanity can fully mobilize. One decisive battle will end this war. The decision was made. 5,000 ships from the remaining Council species assembled for a final assault. It was half the fleet they started with, but still a formidable force. Dex believed it would be enough. He had to believe it, because the alternative was accepting that the Council's 3,000 years of dominance were ending. Admiral Doyon received the intelligence about the coming attack from multiple sources. The Council's communications were so compromised that humanity knew their battle plans almost as soon as they were made. "They're coming to Earth," Doyon told his senior staff. "Every ship we have needs to be at Sol System. This is the battle that will decide everything." The human fleet gathered in Earth's orbit, a defensive sphere of ships surrounding humanity's homeworld. The Shadow Fleet, no longer hidden, displayed its full strength. But even with all their ships, humanity was outnumbered nearly 3-1. President Yemen addressed the fleet before battle. "What you do today will be remembered for all of human history. We fight not for conquest, but for survival. We fight not for power, but for freedom. The Council believes Earth is a target. They're wrong. Earth is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." The Council fleet entered the Sol System with military precision. Dex commanded from his flagship, determined to personally witness humanity's defeat. His ships formed a massive sphere, preparing to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. "All ships, advance," Dex ordered. "Today, we restore order to the galaxy." The battle began at the asteroid belt, where human defensive platforms opened fire. But this was merely the first layer of Earth's defenses. As the Council fleet advanced, they found themselves harried at every step by human ships, using tactics that seemed impossible. Small squadrons would appear, strike hard, and vanish before the Council could respond. Commander Taijin led the Special Operations Forces in the most dangerous mission of the war. While the main fleets engaged, his teams infiltrated the enemy formation in stealth ships, targeting command vessels and communication relays. They moved through the chaos of battle like ghosts, sowing confusion and disruption. "Target the flagship sensor arrays," Taijin ordered. "Make them blind." His team struck with surgical precision, destroying antenna arrays and sensor pods. The Council flagship suddenly found itself unable to coordinate its fleet effectively. Orders were delayed. Responses were confused. The perfect military machine began to stumble. But the Council still had numbers, and they pressed their advantage. The battle moved toward Mars, then past it, Earth's defensive fleet falling back in stages. It looked like a retreat, and Dex allowed himself to hope. "They're breaking," he declared. "All ships, full assault. Crush them." That's when the reinforcements arrived. From beyond Neptune, a new fleet jumped into the system. But these weren't human ships. They were Pelian, Orthary, and Venic vessels, the species that had broken from the Council. Lorvin commanded the Pelian contingent himself, his ships moving into formation alongside humanity. "Admiral Doyon, this is Counselor Lorvin." The Pelian's voice crackled over communications. "We stand with humanity. The Council's tyranny ends today." The tide of battle turned instantly. The Council fleet found itself surrounded, attacked from multiple directions by forces that now outnumbered them. The numerical advantage they had counted on evaporated in moments. Dex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. How? How did they coordinate this without our knowledge? Captain Minho could have told him. Humanity had spent months building secret alliances, using Dr. Sora's quantum communication systems to coordinate with distant species far from Council surveillance. The betrayal Dex feared had already happened. He just hadn't known it. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Council ships began surrendering in groups as their commanders realized they were fighting for a lost cause. Some tried to flee, but human ships cut off their escape routes. Dex's flagship found itself crippled by Tyjan's special forces and pounded by fire from multiple directions. "Sir, shields are at 10%, his tactical officer reported. "Engineering says we've lost main power. We're defenseless." Dex slumped in his command chair, decades of certainty crumbling around him. "All ships, cease fire. We surrender." Captain Minho personally led the boarding party that secured Dex's flagship. The proud counselor was placed under arrest, his feathers dulled with shame and defeat. As they led him away, Dex looked at Minho with genuine confusion. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you fight so hard? We offered you peace. We offered you a place in the Galactic Order." Minho's expression was cold. "You offered us chains and called them peace. You offered us submission and called it order. Humanity would rather die free than live as slaves." On Earth, President Yemen watched the battle's end with mixed emotions. They had won, but at great cost. Thousands of human lives lost. Ships destroyed. Families broken. Victory, he realized, always came with a price. Ambassador Jiwan arrived at Earth 3 days after the battle. She came not to celebrate, but to negotiate. The galaxy needed a new order, and humanity had a responsibility to help build it. She met with representatives from the Pelians, Orthry, Venic, and dozens of other species who had broken from the Council. "We cannot replace the Council with another Council," Jiwan told the assembled delegates. "We cannot build freedom on the foundation of control. We need something different." The negotiations lasted 2 weeks. Finally, they reached an agreement. The Free Systems Alliance would be founded on principles that were revolutionary in galactic politics: voluntary membership, equal representation regardless of species size, and no standing military beyond what each species chose to maintain for its own defense. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration, not force. "This will fail," Councilor Dex said from his prison cell when he heard the news. "Without strong central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos." Ambassador Nari, who visited him as a courtesy, shook her head. "You still don't understand. The chaos you fear is the freedom we embrace. Yes, there will be conflicts. Yes, there will be disagreements. But they will be our conflicts, our disagreements, not imposed from above by beings who believe they know better than everyone else." The trials began. Dex and other council leaders were charged with crimes against sapient species. Centuries of oppression and murder finally brought to light. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring transparency. Some were found guilty, others were cleared. Justice, slow and imperfect, began its work. Dr. Sora opened humanity's technological archives to the Free Systems Alliance. The quantum fold drives, adaptive shields, and advanced weapons that had given humanity such an advantage were shared freely with all species. Some criticized this decision, arguing that humanity should maintain its military edge. "Technology hoarded is technology wasted," Sora responded. "The galaxy doesn't need one strong species protecting everyone else. It needs every species to reach its potential." Donna Yuna helped establish new colonies in systems that had been emptied by council persecution. The survivors from Sunjin's prison camps were given worlds to rebuild their civilizations. Some species had been enslaved for so long they had forgotten their own cultures. Humanity helped them research their histories, recover their languages, rebuild their identities. Captain Sung Jin led exploration missions beyond former council space, charting regions that had been forbidden under the old order. There were dangers out there, unknown threats that the council had warned about. But there were also wonders, opportunities, and potential that had been suppressed for millennia. 6 months after the Battle of Seoul, The Free Systems Alliance held its first full assembly. Representatives from 247 species gathered in a new station built by cooperative effort, not council mandate. There were no assigned seats, no hierarchy of importance. Everyone stood as equals. Ambassador Jiwan took the podium to deliver the opening address. She looked out at the diverse assembly, beings of every imaginable form, united by choice rather than coercion. Peace was never something to be given or taken, she said. It's something we build together, or not at all. The old council believed peace required control. They believed freedom led to chaos. They were wrong. Freedom is the foundation of true peace, because only free beings can genuinely cooperate.